Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a review of Summer in the City by Alex Aster, her new New York Times bestselling adult contemporary romance debut, and also talking about how something in this book ties into some previous controversy with Alex Aster when she was debuting as a YA fantasy author. Let's talk about it. Heads up that I was gifted a copy for review of Summer in the City by the publisher. All opinions are my own, and this is not a sponsored video. Summer in the City is a very fun contemporary rom-com set in New York City. I know the author has said that it was inspired by 90s rom-coms, and it definitely is giving me 90s rom-com vibes in the structure of it and the kind of story it is. It was a really good time. I feel like a lot of people would probably pick this up and enjoy it. It follows a woman who is a screenwriter, and she is house sitting in New York City over the summer trying to work on this rom-com script set at all these locations in New York City and has writer's block. Then she realizes that her neighbor for the summer is this tech billionaire CEO who she's had a run-in with before and wants nothing to do with. And yet, despite her dislike of him, there does seem to be something about him that makes her writing just flow from her. They end up coming to an agreement just for the summer where he will accompany her to all of the locations that she needs to include in this rom-com screenplay that she's writing, and in return she will serve as a fake date for him through events that he needs to attend during the summer. But of course things don't end there. This is a romance, and we know that sparks are gonna fly between the two of them. It's fun and lighthearted, a little bit steamy, and also has a lot of heart to it. I really enjoyed this quite a lot. As somebody who lives in New York, it was also fun to see all of these iconic places in the city scattered throughout it. So this is a very New York City book with a strong sense of place, which I quite enjoyed. And one thing that I found really interesting is that one of the central conflicts between the two of them is their approaches to money. The heroine has a lot of issues with people who try to buy love through things and spend their money really recklessly, and the hero sometimes does things like that, and it does lead to a pretty significant conflict, and I think an understandable one where he makes a major mistake. The one thing I will say about this book is that I wanted more groveling at the end of it. I like the fact that, of course, there's always the third act breakup. I like that they don't just get right back together super easily, but I also think that he should have groveled more given what happened, but it was still a good book and I had a fun time with it. Overall, I think it's a fun, entertaining book. It's the perfect beach read, and I feel like a lot of people would enjoy it. I'm not shocked that this has been such a big bestseller. I think a lot of us really want some joy in our lives right now, and this definitely has that. Now, I did promise you a little bit of tea at the beginning of the video, and this is where things start to get interesting. If you are in the YA fantasy space, you may have heard of Alex Aster before. Her debut novel was a YA fantasy called Lightlark. That was also a huge bestseller. It did very well. It sold in a pretty big deal when she was first out on submission with it, and the Lightlark film rights were optioned prior to the release of the book. Now, I should say that this is not uncommon, especially with lead titles. It is often the case that big books that publishers are pushing will have the film rights optioned before the book even releases. That is not an uncommon thing. However, for some reason, the confluence of events led to this rumor going around the book internet that Alex Aster was an industry plant and that she had gotten this big book deal because of nepotism. So people apparently did some digging. She lives in the New York area now, but she's originally from Florida, and her dad owns a bunch of car dealerships. So her family is moderately wealthy. Not in the entertainment industry though, so it's kind of interesting. But there was this whole thing about, oh my god, this is nepotism. She's an industry plant. She's getting all this success and money not because of her book, but because of her wealthy family, and she's not acknowledging her privilege, etc., etc. Now, when all of this was going down, I think Alex originally said something very briefly and then quickly shut up about it, as she should. She was the author, and it was probably the appropriate thing to do to stay out of reader spaces as this conversation was happening. And to be fair, yeah, of course, there is some degree of privilege that comes from coming from a family where you don't have to worry as much about money because you have more time available to devote to improving your craft of writing. So I think there is some legitimacy to that, but this was like a whole thing. So when I was reading Summer in the City, what I thought was very interesting, and perhaps Alex Aster's way of clapping back to some of the controversy with her first book in a, somewhat more subtle way, is something that happens towards the end of the book. I am going to say this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you're super sensitive to spoilers, you can click away, but I don't think it's that serious. But one of the things that we end up finding out towards the end of the book, because we know throughout it that the heroine is really sensitive to stuff with money and doesn't like people who have a lot of money and flaunt it and use it to buy love, right? Well, we end up finding out that her dad, who she's mostly estranged from, is very wealthy and is well known in the entertainment industry. And this is part of why, as a screenwriter, she's kept her identity a secret, because she didn't want to be accused of nepotism, and she wanted to prove that she could be successful on her own merits without her dad's intervention. It ends up getting out who she is. She is in fact accused of nepotism and getting to where she is because of it. And her kind of private response is like, you don't know who I am. You don't know my background. You don't know how hard I worked to get the success that I have. And I thought that was so interesting, because as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, this feels very relevant to what happened when her first book came out. I did see that Alex on social media recently posted a TikTok video that I will link down below if I can find it. She talked about how she had written, I want to say 8 books prior to Lightlark getting picked up, and had no idea that it was going to take off in the way that it did. And this is not an uncommon story. There are, of course, some authors who their first or second book gets published and it does fairly well, but often there are writers who are spending years writing multiple manuscripts and honing their craft before they have a book that actually takes off for them or gets published. And that seems to be the case for Alex. She also does a ton of work marketing her books and being on social media, and I think does a really good job of it. So I'm not going to tell you what to think about it. I think there is some truth to the fact that having the time and space to be able to write 8 books before writing Lightlark, because maybe you come from a background where you're not forced to be working full-time. Is there a privilege in that? Yeah, for sure. But I found it really interesting that this book feels a little bit like a clapback in a more subtle way to the people who are criticizing her of nepotism and of being an industry plant when she first debuted. Some kind of interesting background. If you haven't yet, I do recommend Summer in the City. If you're into romance and you're looking for a fun, beachy, summery read, I think this is a really good one. Also, it's so pretty. The first printing has these like gorgeous sprayed edges. It's got a map of New York. There's like a bunch of different editions, and I know some of them have already sold out because it's been such a bestseller, which is great for her, which is great. Happy for Alex. So check it out if you're interested, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you read Summer in the City? Do you plan to? Did you know about this controversy back when Lightlark came out? Were you aware of that? And what do you think of this as a way of pushing back on some of that criticism? I think it's an interesting way to do it. Also, as a reminder, me and Izzy from Happy for Now are co-hosting a bookish retreat in Costa Rica next January, and there are now only 5 early bird spots left available, which is very exciting. We had another booking just last night, so I'm super excited about that. So if you want to come hang out with us, relax, eat fresh mango, read books, talk about bookish drama in January right after the holidays, you can find the link down below, and I would love to see some of you there. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them. And we do have a frequently asked questions post up on our Instagram pages and also on the YouTube community threads, so you can find that there. If you reach this point in the video, leave me a tea emoji down below, since we're talking about some bookish drama here. And again, I would love to hear from you, your thoughts on this book, on the Alex Aster controversy. If this is something you're planning to pick up, let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.